Okay, first question. When you say taxes as an S corporation, can you elaborate on an S corporation? So an S corporation and a partnership in that matter are what's called pass-through entities. They don't really pay taxes on their own, but it passes through to each individual owner. But the S corporation, the advantage is that it's not, the owners are not subject to self-employment tax like the other entities, like the single member LLC or the multi-member LLC or the general partnership or the sole proprietorship. An S corporation is not subject to that self-employment tax, which is Medicare and Social Security taxes, which adds up to 15.3%. And so, but they also are required to run a reasonable wage for the owners, and then you can take out the rest of the income as without being subject to that self-employment tax. Oh, the next question, can you change? So that's kind of a tricky question, because as you set up a single member LLC, yes, you have the chance or the opportunity to elect to be taxed as something else. You can be a single member LLC or a multi-member LLC being taxed like an S corporation. So you could start out as one of those, and that LLC gives you that flexibility to make that switch. So you could kind of see what's going to work at best. But once you've made that election to be in like an S corporation, yes, you can revoke it. But then after you've made you've revoked it, it makes it so that you can't elect it again for a long period of time. So you want to study it out beforehand and try to make a good decision. I'm from Missouri and looking for grants and funding for small businesses. That's more of a, I'm not sure about your situation in Missouri and grants and funding for small businesses. I would check with your bank that you work with that's for your business and see if they can steer you in the right direction. Why would it be a positive for a single member LLC to be able to file taxes as an S corporation? It comes down to that self-employment tax, because if you are a single member LLC, your net income, all of it's going to be subject to self-employment tax, which is that 15.3%. But if you can switch over to become an S corporation, then a portion you'd pay the Social Security and Medicare taxes on your reasonable wage, but your other income would not be subject to that self-employment tax. So it would save you that 15.3% on the other income that you're taking from the S corporation. I was told that an S corp is not a business entity, but a tax status. You can only open up an LLC, a corporation, or a sole proprietor, etc., and then file as an S corp. So you're right in a certain aspect that an S corporation is a type of corporation. So if you started an actual corporation, you can make the election to have it taxed like an S corporation, and a LLC, you can have it taxed like an S corporation as well. So I see what you're saying about it not being its own type of entity, but it's taxed. And so, yes, you're right. But the S corp is gives you that advantage and everything. Okay, so for an S corporation, If you are essentially a one-person operation with occasional subcontractors, I understand you pay yourself as an owner a reasonable wage. How do the dividends beyond the salary get paid or received by the owner? You just write yourself a check. So for instance, say the business is making $150,000 and in net income, and you determine that your reasonable wage is $70,000. So you're paying yourself that $70,000, which is an expense to the business and income to you personally. That other $80,000 that's left over in the business, you can just write yourself a check or transfer it from the business account to your personal account to pay yourself as the business owner. And that portion is not subject to self-employment tax. Can you offer guidance to business owners with the professional license who provide clinical service, psychotherapy? What business structure works best? Again, it kind of is depends on your individual business and where you're at, but a good place to start would probably be a LLC, a single member LLC, because then that would give you the flexibility if you want to eventually make the election to become an S corporation. How can one determine a reasonable wage that will hold up to an IRS challenge? Great question. And that's one that the IRS doesn't ever come right out and say, this is a reasonable wage. So it kind of depends on your industry. It depends on your business in your industry. And so I would be looking at similar businesses that are in your industry and see what kind of salaries people are paying to individuals that are working in your industry, as well as what other type of work are you doing for your business? Are you doing some bookkeeping, office management, that kind of stuff? What would you pay an office manager? And so it kind of takes an analysis to kind of go through it. But that's kind of the guidance that I would suggest. For an LLC, you said you can be taxed as a sole proprietorship or as an S corporation. Based on what you said, is it true that an S corp tax benefits are greater than a sole proprietorship because of no self-employment tax? That's what I'm saying, but it's up to the point, because an S, if your business is not making money, that self-employment tax is only taxed when you have net income. If you don't have any net income, if you're just starting out and the business is running at a loss, then there's no self-employment tax no matter what type of entity you are. And so what you probably should do is wait until the business is profitable and you're making money, and that there will be tax savings by making that election to become an S corporation. Are you supposed to save all receipts for your business, or are bank statements good enough for the IRS? Unfortunately, the IRS does like to look at specific receipts. And the reason for that, if they see, say you bought an expense at Walmart, which could be a legitimate expense, but if they just see it on the bank statement, they don't know if that's buying a computer or buying your groceries at Walmart. So that's why the IRS wants to see your receipts. So I would suggest, getting a scanner, scan your receipts and just file them away electronically, so you don't have to have a big box full of receipts. But yes, keep your receipts for the IRS purposes. If you are both sole proprietorship and an S corporation, could you deposit sole proprietorship income into your S corp? So if you have two businesses and one's a sole proprietorship and one's an S corp, yes, you could do exactly that and deposit your money or the net income from your sole proprietorship into your S corp bank account and count it as income in the S corp, and then you would not be subject to that self-employment tax. I have a single member LLC as a sole employee in Nevada. I am thinking of pivoting my business model to one that would involve bringing on 10 plus employees. Would this change the type of business I would want to have set up? Not unless you want to give them some type of ownership in the business, because a sole proprietorship can have as many employees as you want. It just can't have other partners. Please confirm that 15% employment tax on LLC is after deductions or netting. It is. It's on your net income. So the self-employment tax is only on your net income, which is your gross sales minus all of your expenses. That's when you pay the self-employment tax. Can I open an LLC on a state website on my own, or having a professional do it be best? Kind of depends on your specific situation. If you're not really scared about the litigation or being sued, then it's perfectly fine to set up your LLC on the state website. They're kind of generic or boilerplate operating agreements. But if you're more nervous about getting sued, then I'd have a professional set you up. So on W-9, would you designate yourself in box 3 as an S corp or single member filing as an S corporation? If you are a single member and filing as an S corp, I would do the latter, the filing as an S corporation option. What is the difference between electing single member LLC and a PLLC? So an LLC and a PLLC are basically the same, except the PLLC is for professionals that are subject to licensing. I plan to hire contractors as part of my agency. Hiring contractors is perfectly fine, and you will not have to pay employment taxes on those contractors. The only issue that you might arrive from is the IRS has a list of standards that determine whether they should be employees or independent contractors. And if it weighs more heavily on the side that they are employees, then they could come back and say they need to be reclassified as employees. But other than that, it's perfectly fine to treat them as contractors. Can your firm assist me in establishing a reasonable wage? Yeah, we could walk through and talk to your specific situation, and that would we'd be able to come up with a reasonable wage together. Would it be true that forming an LLC with the election to be taxed as an S corporation is a way to have the best of both worlds? If you are a profitable business, you get more simple setup of the entity and greater tax benefit. Yes, I would agree with that. And a lot of our clients do that. They set up the LLC and wait until it is their business is profitable, because like I said before, you don't pay self-employment tax when there's not net income. When there's a net loss, you don't have to worry about self-employment tax. And so a lot of our clients set up as an LLC, wait till they have a good amount of net income for the business, then make the election to be set up as or be taxed like an S corporation. If you are an LLC with an election to be taxed as an S corporation, do you still need to set up payroll system with a reasonable? Yes, anytime you're an S corporation, you need to be set up. That's one of the requirements of to be taxed as an S corporation, is to have a reasonable wage for the owners. Are there safe harbor business personal splits with auto expenses and deductions? Yes, and we could go into that in more detail. I would have you reach out to one of our specific accountants and we can go into that in more detail. I am an S Corp. Can I hire W-9? I think that's IC independent contractors, or would I have to hire them as employees? No, you can hire independent contractors as an S corporation. The only thing you have to do as an S corporation is pay the owner a reasonable wage as an employee. The other, if you can justify them as independent contractors, then that's perfectly fine to pay them as independent contractors in your S corp. If I want to pay someone for work, do they have to do a W-9? Well, if they are independent contractor, you want them to fill out a W-9. If they're an employee, you'd want them to fill out a W-4 form. So it just depends on if they're an employee or an independent contractor. If you have an LLC as a single person, would it be wise to operate as a S corp or remain as an LLC? If your situation, how do I phrase this? So since it's already an LLC, I would keep it as an LLC, and when it is profitable or it justifies it, then I would just have it elect to become or be taxed like an S corporation. There's no need to set up another S corporation. Can payroll be quarterly or annually and fly with the IRS? Yes, it can. But the payroll reports that go along with payroll can be kind of complicated. So it's probably easier just to join like a payroll provider or hire a payroll provider and have them help you. And as long as they're willing to do it on a quarterly basis, then that's perfectly fine. If you start an LLC but do not make any profits by the time you have to file taxes, do you have to pay a huge amount to the IRS after filing, or there are certain percentages you have to pay? If you do not have profits, there won't be any taxes that are due to the IRS for your business, I should say, because a loss will not be subject to income tax. For an S corp or LLC taxed as an S corp, for the dividends from net income above a reasonable wage, you said that you just write yourself a check or transfer the funds from the business account. Can these transfers be done throughout the year, or do you have to wait until the final net income? No, you can do those throughout the year. You can do them whenever you want. Basically, whenever there's cash in the account, you can write yourself a check after the expenses are paid. Do you have to reside in the same state as the S corporation? You do not, but you will be taxed in the state that you are going to reside. So it usually benefits you to be in the same state as your corporation. why would someone want extra expense and ongoing management of an S corporation if they can be an LLC taxed as an S corporation? Well, there's still, that's a great question, and I would probably agree with you that that's probably the best option to go with is a LLC taxed as an S corporation, because then you have the best of both worlds. In moving from a sole proprietorship to a single member LLC filing as an S corporation, can you just update your EIN with your bank, or must you open a new account and provide the number? You can just keep that same bank account, because when you, oh, maybe I read your question wrong. Because if you're a sole proprietorship and then you want to create an LLC, then yes, you would have to set up a new checking account, because it would have a new EIN number. I was thinking that you were a single member LLC and then made the switch to an S corporation, because if you're a single member LLC already and just elect to be taxed as an S corporation, that will keep the same EIN number. So then you would not have to change your business checking account. But if you're a sole proprietorship doesn't have EIN number. It's just going off of your social security number. And so if you go from a sole proprietorship and create an LLC, a single member LLC, then you would. What entity would be taxed higher, an LLC or an S corporation? They're both, they wouldn't be taxed themselves. They just flow through to the owners, except the LLC is going to be subject to the self-employment tax. So the individuals would have to pay the self-employment tax. But if they were taxed as an S corporation, they would not have that self-employment tax. What is the difference between an S Corp and C Corp from a tax perspective? So they're both corporations. The biggest difference is a C Corp completely pays its own taxes, and it's like it's its own person. So the shareholders never have to pay taxes on the income from a C corporation. Now they do have to pay the dividend, or they have to pay income taxes on the dividends that a C Corp pays to the individual. But as the biggest disadvantage of a C corporation is a C corporation, it pays its own taxes on its income. And then if it pays out a dividend on that net income to the shareholders, they have to pay taxes on that income as well. And so now you've got double taxation. And so if you're, depending on your situation, for most cases, an S corporation would be better. But again, it all depends on your situation. Why is establishing payroll a requirement for being taxed as an S corporation? The reason is the IRS wants to collect some self-employment tax, which is the Social Security and Medicare taxes for the, from the business owner. And so to do that, they require a reasonable wage of the owners. And then that portion is subject to the Social Security and Medicare taxes, and the dividend portion is not. If you change to a single member LLC filing as an S Corp from a sole proprietorship in September, do you get to claim your earnings since January as an S Corp, or filing two separate returns? This is kind of a tricky situation. Technically, you could do it that way, yes. But I would look at your specific situation. For an LLC taxed as an S Corp, do you file a separate business return and then your personal tax return? Yes. So the S Corp would file its own tax return, and then each owner, or if there's only one owner, would receive a K-1 that distributes their earnings, or at least reports their earnings for their individual, an individual on their individual return. So there's the next part of your question. So there's an increase in your tax preparation costs. Now that depends on the service that you're using. If you're with Mazuma, your business return is included in with your fees that you're paying. And so that would just be part of the fees. Okay. And for the personal return, are you just counting your reasonable wage as income? No, you would. So you would include the reasonable wage, but you also would include the net income, which is after the reasonable wage, as income. So remember my example earlier that if you made $150,000 and paid yourself a reasonable wage of $70,000, and so you had net income of 80 on your personal, so that's on the S Corp side. And so you have a net income of 80,000 on the S Corporation. On your personal return, you would report as income W-2 wages of 70 and the 80,000 of net income from the S Corporation. So you're still paying income taxes on the full $150,000 of your business, but only the 70,000 that you had to pay the Social Security and Medicare taxes. So the 80,000 you did not. For an LLC taxes and S Corp, do you file separate business? So I think we answered this already. Yeah, we already got that one. How long do I have to elect an S Corp taxation from setting up my, so you have, I think it's 3 years from the time that you file your single member LLC, but then again, I'll look into that. We can get back to you on that. I already have an LLC established. I also do online day trading. Does it benefit me to book any profit and losses under the LLC versus my personal income? It depends on what your classification of day trading, if you actually filed as a day trader with the IRS or not. And so we probably need to find out a little more about your specific situation. So that would be worth scheduling a phone call. What are some recommendations for simple ways or vendors to set up payroll? There are a number of payroll providers out there that can help you. Just to name a few, and we're not affiliated with any of these, but ADP, Gusto, Sure Payroll, they've been in the business for a long time and have done great work for our clients. So if I work in one state but moved recently to another, I registered in the new state since we reside there and got a home waiver for self-employment, but we are still working in the other state since it's only 10 minutes away, and we've been working there for several years. What is the best way not to get taxed in both states? Unfortunately, if you're doing the work in that other state, we'd have to look at your specific situation. But if you're doing the work in that state and doing the work in your own state, we'd have to allocate the income to each state. But if you are, say, telecommuting and you are only doing it in your state, then we could report the income in your state. Just to elaborate on one of your previous answers, if a business changes from a sole proprietorship to a single member filing as a late in the year, you are allowed to report all your earnings for your entire year, or do you have to? You always have to file the S Corp tax return separate from the business return. Now, how you can allocate that income, that just kind of depends on when that income comes in. So if you can get that income to come in the later part of the year, then that could benefit you. Or as if you wanted to be tricky with it, you could actually transfer some of that income from the sole proprietorship to the S Corp by writing a check to the S Corp, counting it as an expense in the sole proprietorship and counting it as income in the S Corporation. So there are ways around it. So yes, to answer your question, you could do that. You said S Corp was not able to write off as much. No, I didn't say, I don't know if I misspoke or if you misunderstood, but an S Corporation can write off as much as any other business. The only thing that the S Corp is going to save on is the self-employment tax. And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure, and I'm sorry if I misled you with that, but an S Corporation has the same write-offs as any other business entity. If I'm interested in transitioning from sole proprietorship to LLC taxed as an S Corp, is it typically cleanest and easiest to set up the LLC starting? I would, yes, I would set up the new LLC and just have everything going through at that given point in time, because then you can stop the sole proprietorship and start the LLC and it's all clear. As LLC, can I hire international employee or contractor and pay them? Yes, you can. What forms would you need to complete? You'd need to get their I-10 and W-8. How far back can I gather startup expenses? You can go back to January of the current year to pick up your startup expenses. Okay. I think that's the last of our questions. If you have additional questions or need help, please reach out to our team at any time. Here you will see a few ways you can get a hold of our team. We would love to help you. Thank you for joining me today for our webinar. I hope you came away with some valuable insights that can help your business succeed. Just the fact that you are here, willing to learn and improve, demonstrates you are on track and doing the right things to grow your business. I know all this information can be a lot to take in at once, so we will email you a video of this webinar. We will post it on our website and YouTube channel for your reference later. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Bye.